name is Andrew Tonnies, and this is Hideaway Farm. We live here on 16 acres, and we produce pastured organic grain-fed pork and pastured organic grain-fed broiler chickens. We have a large market garden, so we're selling fresh-cut greens, fruit, and jellies and jams, and flour jellies at the farmers market, one in Omaha and one here in North Bend. Well, it is spring, and we are in my unheated hoop house, and I've had things planted in here since February, and just recently got a first crop of bok choy harvested out of here and sold to a farm to fork store. In my heated greenhouse, I'm using that primarily for seed starts. So I've got trays and trays of different things that I'm planning on planting or selling at the farmer's market as, for someone else to plant. All the tomatoes and peppers, and I'm taking a diversified approach on tomatoes and peppers this year, just all kinds of different ones. And different lettuces and broccolis, brassicas, my onion starts are in there, it's different herbs, a little bit of everything. Some of the challenges to think about now in the early part of the spring is what you're gonna want and when you're gonna want it. So if you decide you want to plant a specific type of tomato or a zucchini or whatever it is, if you haven't started that, a month and a half ahead of time, you're gonna end up having to buy that. So one thing I do in the early spring with my garden is broad forking, which is what that is. And this is how it works. You step on it, work it down into the soil as far as you can. It's kind of subsoiling, creating space for microbes and moisture to get down deeper than your tiller is gonna go. Oh, we gotta look at soil. That's always fun. Got a nice little worm here. Roots, nice color, more worms. That is pretty soil. I typically will buy feeder pigs in the winter time. So I got this group of pigs back in December and kept them on grain in my barnyard all winter long. And then once we got some moisture and the grass started to green up with some good temperatures, I turned them out on an acre paddock where they've been for the past month. There's about 10 acres. I have it divided into 8 paddocks, and each one is around an acre, more or less. As a general rule of thumb, I'll leave them out on a paddock for a month and before I'll think about moving them. I supplement their pasture foraging with organic grain, and that is their favorite time of day. I use a 2-strand hot wire fence for the paddocks and my outside perimeter for the entire pasture area. And in the center of the pasture, I have a welded wire corral area, and that's where I will feed the pigs. That's where they have their water, and they have a little shelter there. So that's their home base, kind of a sacrifice area. That's where they're fed and where they water is going to be where you get the most impact. And so it's good to just pick a spot and let them do their pig stuff there. I think the biggest challenge for right now, this late spring, heading into early summer, it's going to start getting real hot here soon, is there's just so much to do. It's exhausting. You just work all day and it's tough. It's tough to keep up with everything, and you're adjusting your expectations from your early spring optimism and coming back to reality, and like, well, maybe this thing over here is not going to get done, anytime real soon, and learning to be okay with that and focusing in on the stuff that really needs to get done, like fixing fence. Well, it's midsummer, it's hot, it's humid, it's miserable outside. try to do as much in the mornings as I can, and then in the evenings and during most of the day I try to find things to do that are not terribly hot. This time of year I am basically just moving the pigs periodically from one paddock to another, and they've been in their current paddock for about a month, a little over a month maybe. It's always a judgment call when it's time to switch, and right now each paddock is around an acre, give or take, and 20 pigs, you know, figure a month, and they've probably eaten whatever they want to eat out of that. Another thing we do on our diversified farm is we raise broiler chickens, and we raise these. These are a Freedom Ranger type of chicken. We really like how active these birds are, and it seems like they're really living their best chicken life, and they're not just hanging out next to the feed trough all day, getting fat in an insanely short amount of time. So these birds are ready in between 10 to 12 weeks, and we direct market them to customers. We butcher them ourselves and package them into vacuum sealed bags and have whole frozen chickens for sale. And it's been a really nice part of what we do. Like it's one of our high dollar items, and people are starting to recognize us for it and come back and ask us, you know, the next year after we've run out of chickens, they're waiting for more. So that's a good thing. So this is our second group of 60 chickens that we're raising this summer. They arrive in a box as tiny little chicks that are a few days old, and we keep them in a brooder to keep them safe and warm for the first 2 to 3 weeks before I'll move them into this. And I'll keep them inside their mobile coop for a week or so, just to help them get used to it. I want to start seeing adult feathers on them before I'll let them out of the coop, and so that they can free range. And then by the time they're like 9 weeks old right now, they'll be 10 weeks old next week when we butcher them, and they should come in at a dressed weight around 4 to 5 pounds, hopefully. This chicken tractor, I've designed it this way so that I don't have too much impact on the ground at any one time. They are up off the ground. They just go in here at night and when they want to drink water. But I move this every day. I just pull it along and kind of spread out their manure, because their manure is very concentrated when they're in there for 8 hours at night. And this is really nice actually on butcher day. I leave them in here, and we'll move it over to where I will process the chickens, and that way I don't have to chase the chickens. They're all right here, and I can just open this door and reach in and grab one. So it makes life a lot easier for me, which is also important. Summer is a very busy time in the garden and the greenhouse, and primarily because just everything needs water, everything needs weeded, everything needs care. It seems like all the time. The weather's been a challenge for the tomatoes. Even though they look great and they are producing some nice tomatoes, getting them to ripen has been a challenge, just because it's been so hot. And tomatoes need some cooler nights in order to start the ripening process. So what I've been doing is I find one like this, or even less ripe, so it's just starting to turn at the bottom, and I'll pick it and set it on a tray in the house and give it about a week, and it will start to ripen that way. So on the outside row here, I've got jalapeno peppers. Then the next row I have some eggplants and some other tomatoes. And down this row we have sweet banana peppers and bell peppers, and then cherry tomatoes down at the end. And over on the other side, I had a very early cool season garden, and what's left of it is some overgrown broccoli. But I did have Napa cabbage and iceberg lettuce and romaine lettuce and this broccoli all growing in here. And I was harvesting this like much earlier than most other people would have it available. So it did work out really well. Here in the late summer, what we've got going outside is we've got kale and Brussels sprouts and broccoli still going. We're on like a 3rd or 4th cutting on the broccoli. Over on my warm season side, we've got peppers and tomatoes, more of those. And we've also got winter squash, quite a bit of that. And green beans. The green beans are going pretty strong. And I'm looking forward to the fall, and so are some of my brassicas like the Brussels sprouts and the kale, which after they're touched by a light frost actually sweetens the plant a little bit. So this is probably like a 3rd harvest off of these broccoli, and the initial heads of broccoli were really nice and large, and you know, they keep getting smaller throughout the season. But the regrowth you get, you can still harvest these, and you know, I would sell this head for $1, you know, and you go down the row and you know, you might get $15, $20 out of it, and that's pretty nice for a 4th cutting on a row of broccoli. We also have a nice stand of popcorn that I'm pretty excited about. I grew some last year, just a few rows. You just kind of let it dry out on the plant and harvest it in the fall. And it's tough, it's super tall, it's really impressive to grow it. I kind of enjoy it for that, because it's like, look how tall my corn is. And last year's crop, it turned out to be a really popular item at the farmer's market. And so it was a nice kind of, we pre-packaged it ahead of time in a 2-pound bag and sold it. And it was super easy to just have it there on the table, and people seemed excited about it. It sold well, and we sold out pretty quickly. So this year I grew more popcorn, and I'm looking forward to harvesting here in the fall. Farmers markets have been good. The one in Omaha obviously has more people come through than the North Bend one, but I do enjoy the North Bend one just because it's my community, it's where I live, and I get to meet some neighbors, and it's nice to see some neighbors come out to try to support what I'm doing. Farmers markets are a great resource for someone like me because it's a direct avenue to consumers. And so I have a product to sell, and I don't have to take it to a wholesaler who then takes it to a retailer, you know, and so like there's a markup each time along there, but I'm able to go and charge the retail price, which is great. People want to know where their food comes, they want to know their farmer and talk to them and know what their practices are, you know, and build a relationship. So that's all part of like this community movement, I think, of, you know, urban or small holding agriculture. Well, in the fall, it is time to get the pigs loaded and to the butcher. So this year I'm going to 3 different butchers. So just sorting pigs and getting the right ones to the right place. About a month before butcher date, I brought them in from the pasture out there, brought them into the barnyard, and they still have access to about an acre of pasture that's right off of the barnyard. I have the trailer backed up to the gate, and I start feeding them in the trailer so they're totally comfortable going in there. Yeah, pig, 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 pig! It's a lot easier if you can get a pig to willingly get onto a trailer and then kind of sort them out from there. That helps a lot. On loading day, I set out just a line of feed so they all line up, and I can just get a good look at them and be like, okay, you're smaller, you're bigger, you know, and I have this many pigs that are going to go to the locker today, so I'm going to take the biggest ones, of course. Come on out of that corner, just you. And you just got to kind of step in and look at how the pigs are acting, and where their head is pointed is kind of where they want to go. So if you can get their head pointed in the right direction and kind of just nudge them along a little bit with the board and get them to jump past you, you know, you just got to do it, you know, before you really get very good at it. It's a learned thing for sure. It's not intuitive. My preference is to get them loaded on the trailer the night before I take them to the locker. Take the stress out of it for the pigs and yourself. Day of, I'm gonna drive up to West Point and embarrass myself trying to back up the trailer. Once there, the locker, they're gonna ask for who are the customers that are buying these pigs and phone numbers. And so they're gonna call the customers that I have lined up buying these pigs, and they're gonna ask for that customer's cutting instructions. And then they're gonna talk about, how much processing will cost, all their different cuts and curing that they can do, and how long it's gonna take. A day or two after I drop them off, the locker will call me and give me a hanging weight for each pig. So that's how I charge, by hanging weight. And then the processor's fee is separate and on top of my fee. So the pigs I have left, I have 7 pigs left, and I'm gonna be taking them in 2 months, early December, for processing, USDA inspected. So I'll be able to sell it by a pound of bacon, or a pound of pork chops, or sausage, or however, as opposed to the system I'm doing now, which is called custom slaughter, and that's like someone's buying a half of a pig or a whole pig. While I have these 7 pigs, and it is early autumn, beginning of October, the garden is kind of putting itself to bed for the year. The weeds totally got out of control on me this year. It's not pretty. So I'll put down a cover crop, and I'll let the pigs in there, and I'm gonna let them eat the weeds, stir up the seeds that I put down. And so they're basically gonna plant it for me. They are my tillage equipment. So they're dual purpose animals. They're tillage and they're meat. Here we are in the winter. It's planting season, so been planting too, and just picked up some feeder pigs. This group of pigs are a 3-way cross of Duroc, Hampshire, and Spot. So once we get them here, we need to have space prep that's warm and dry and out of the wind. So I have a space in the barn for them where I'll close them up at night just to keep it warm. And I have several heat lamps set up, straw bedding, and I'm going to keep them in the barnyard here a couple of weeks just to let them work out any stress that they might have gone through in the move here, and get comfortable here. And then I will start turning on my hot wire fence that I have inside of the barnyard to train them that it's there and what it will do for them. Most of it is just waiting until the pigs are big enough to be cognizant of that fence. Other stuff we're doing in the winter is we're slowly getting started on some seed starts. So that's different than most people do it with onion sets. But I prefer this starting it from seed indoors in January. It works well for me. Other things we have started is some types of herbs. I've got some peppers, several different types of peppers, and I'm just now thinking like maybe we need to start on tomatoes and start getting those going, and some leafy green stuff, some cool season hardy-ish stuff, some bok choy. Well, I have some here, some bok choy, and some butter crunch. This is a red butter crunch lettuce, which has been in here and doing just fine, but I need to start getting more seed starts ready to go for the larger garden. So I'm prepared for that when the weather changes. One thing that's really nice about a space like this in the winter, when it's cold and dark and bleak, there's a thing called seasonal affective disorder. Maybe heard of it. It's something that exists in the northern latitudes.
it's nice to come in here and be among things that are photosynthesizing and smell fresh, damp earth, and just sit in the sunlight with your jacket off and soak up some warmth. It's almost like most valuable as a mental health space as opposed to, all of the seeds that we start. And I don't know if we'll ever make the money back that we spent to build this, but it's a nice space. Well, I always felt like being diversified was important to me because I didn't want to have all my eggs in one basket, so to speak. Because one thing fails, and then you just don't have anything to fall back on. So, but what am I going to diversify in, or like what am I going to be good at? Like, you got to choose something to be good at. It's taken me a while to come around to, like, I'm good at raising hogs, so I'm going to do that. I'm good at raising chickens. Okay, I can do that. And I'm good at growing a garden. So, but like, we've had some stops and starts. We've done some stupid stuff. Have I ever told you, like, I would call this place, if I was to name it again, Don't Do What I Did Acres? I've made so many mistakes. There's been a lot of dead ends, but I guess the advice would be don't be afraid of making mistakes, because that's how you learn.